Major Dumb. Come in from your room. We've checked the feeds, we've checked the memes. This launch is a cartoon. Flurf control to Major Dumb. Your rocket's just a balloon. They filmed you in a warehouse. There's no rocket ship, there's no big plume. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is Major Dumb to Flurf control. I'm strapped in, feel the shake. The tower falls away from me. You can't deep fake this quake. Major Dumb to Flurf control. I'm way above your room, rising through the blue so fast it turns to velvet soon. You say it's all projection, but the windows say you're wrong. I'm floating past your story, and it's been wrong all along. Major Dumb, our charts all show you splashed into the sea. They dropped a capsule from a plane. You're still on Odyssey. Flurf control. I hate to break it, your script is out of date. The engine's burned, the booster's turned. I watch the coastline fade. You talk about a snow globe sky, a ceiling painted cold, but I just watched horizons curve in every shade of gold. Major Dumb to Flurf control. The world's a swirling sphere. Clouds wrap round in lazy bands from pole to stratosphere. You say it's just a clever CGI veneer, but your world's become an island, and it's really, really small from here. You said there is a crystal shell, a cover hard and bright. I'm flying where your ceiling sits, yet nothing blocks the light. No glass, no grid, no glowing dome, just darkness deep and clear. Your dome was in your browser tabs, not hanging over here. Flurf control to Major Dumb. Our live chat says the pictures are all lies. Agencies just sell us tales, they're demons in disguise. Major Dumb to Flurf control. Your fears are getting loud, but I'm looking at an ocean that wraps behind a cloud. If stories had you cornered, I'm not here to shout you down, just asking you to tilt your head and spin that view around. Major Dumb to Flurf control. I'm circling slow and clear. I see the night chase after day around this shining sphere. You swore there'd be an edge, a wall where colors stop, but every orbit proves you wrong. We're living on a drop. Flurf control to Major Dumb. Your signal's getting thin. If space is real, if globe is true, where do our stories spin? This is Major Dumb to Flurf control. I'll bring you souvenirs around Blue Earth in every shot, and maybe calm your fears. Flurf control to Major Dumb. Flurf control to Major Dumb. Are you there?
everybody. It is a Wednesday night. A little different. Was going to do this Sunday, but kind of got caught up in a bunch of other things. Had some personal things come up or from professional things that I had to get done. And then was going to do it last night because a particular TikTok conspiratard was going to go live. And, well, he was late. And I was tired. And he's on the West Coast, so I wasn't going to stay up. But I did record quite a bit of his bullshit. So that'll be fun. Um, Hold on, I got a slight problem here. All right. My Stream Deck is not online, but you know what? Fuck it. I rarely use it anyway. Um, so what are we going to be talking about tonight? Well, moon landing deniers. And if you spend any time in this sort of, I don't know, cesspool in the corner of the internet, you'll eventually get asked, what conspiracies do you believe in? Or what's your best proof of blah? Take your fucking pick of whatever topic they want to discuss. And I've gotten that many a times for moon landing. How do you know we went to the moon? Very simple. A guy in Kentucky listened in on it, recorded it, and was reported on it without notifying NASA, without asking for permission, and just to see if he could do it. And in that guy became a legend. He is an absolute legend in the not only radio astronomy, but also in the ham operator world and amateur radio operators. And he's really, really cool in the sense of what he accomplished because he pulled off quite a feat. And we're going to kind of go into that a little bit tonight. I'm going to warn you ahead of time. We're going to have to pull a Watley on this. We're going to have to engineer the shit out of it so you guys can all see what goes into the idea of engineering a circuit. So, you know, if you are notified that NASA is going up and this is what the frequencies they're going to use, and you wanted to see if you can track it, do Doppler shift to see them moving away and them coming closer, and being able to find out where they are as far as the azimuth and elevation and things like that. And you had a year to do it, what it would take to do that. So that's kind of what we're going. So yeah, it's unfortunately, there's gonna be some math, but the math I think is important because like most conspiratards, they don't ever do math. So that's problematic. So we'll have to do it for them. Now, on the side note, one of these conspiratards, his name is Jack Tracks on TikTok, supposedly has his own theory. So besides debunking that Larry Baysinger could not receive the signal from the moon, he also says that it was filmed in a National Guard base just behind Larry's house. So we're going to talk about a bunch of their claims. There's also some other claims that I have heard that we're going to discuss, but we're going to discuss them very briefly because, well, they're stupid. Not that these ones aren't, but they're more dumb. If you guys remember that Dr. Kashvili, whatever the fuck his name was, the hippie yoga PhD wannabe who's working for the Chinese space agency, who says they're blackmailing NASA and all this other stuff. The janitor, he made a couple different claims too, specifically when he was talking to Toon. So we're going to go through all those. Yes, Donnie, you're right. Just like Flirts, the only evidence moon landing deniers have is their personal incredulity. Now, here's the funny thing about Jack. I don't think Jack was a flat earther at first. He was just a moon denier. And as he started getting traction with the flat earthers, he started feeling accepted. And Jack's an interesting character. From a psychological point of view, I would love to have someone in to discuss him. But outside of that, I can't make a clinical diagnosis except that he is weird as fuck, and apparently has a reputation on TikTok for being, uh, let's just say, holding some beliefs that are counterintuitive, so to speak, I guess. Uh, but anyway, I digress. Um, I did learn something new about Jack the other night. He served in the Navy, apparently. We both have the same first name, and it appears that we both lived in the same area for, yeah, I don't know if he was born there or not, but where I grew up. So there's that. I don't know what to make of that. It's like kind of finding out I was born the same year as Mikey Smith and realizing that as the same age, how did I make it through school? And he obviously didn't. So I have that same question about Jack Trax or whatever his name is, Dan Mercer. But if you guys remember, we talked about theatrical paydays, right? The bets, the challenges, they'll never be paid off. Well, Jack has one. $1,000 to prove him wrong. By the end of this, Jack, I will give you my PayPal or my Venmo, and you can kindly send your money there. So, no, Calder, he and I have the same first name, actual birth name, not bullshit names. Like my first name's not Unfornicated, nor is it my last name. Go figure. Anyway, so as usual, grab your favorite vice. Water, juice, alcoholic beverage. I don't know, smoke them if you got them. Tonight is going to test all of our patients. So luckily, I just opened up the bottle of spiced rum. Not sponsored. However, open the sponsorships. Only if you're a rum label, though. So let's kick this off, shall we? So, you Zoo crew, all those who are here, thank you very much for joining us. Here's a toast to you and a reminder. A little less than 2 weeks, I will be in Lowell with Mike from the Drunk the Bunk show. And we'll be live streaming from the Lowell Folk Festival. And we'll be hopefully talking to some conspiratards and teaching some kids some physics. And all that was due to gracious donations from all of those in the community. Specific individuals know who you are. Couldn't done it without y'all, all of you, whether you donated or not, whether you're just in the live stream, whether you just watched the live stream. That was plenty. So let's get started with this. Here's cheers to all you. Trust me, you're gonna need it. All right. So let's start off with a little statistic. And that is, let me move my notes over here. Yesterday, when you said Jack was going live, I was like, Jack Feder, he was at that time flat smacking Oakley. Yeah, I've mentioned Jack a few times on here, but I haven't actually said his like full username, which is Jack Trax, but I digress. By the way, I did pop into his live, and he muted me when I said that he had no fucking clue about radio or anything else like that, because he thought the term very high frequency meant that they were very high frequencies, and that there weren't very many frequencies above it. So this will tell you right now the kind of level of derpitude we're dealing with, because there's at least 3 bands above it. So yes, they're named weird. They're named by the International, I think, Telecommunications Union, or the IEEE, and they did it back in the 50s. So as more frequencies became available, we had to name them differently. So we went from like high frequency to very high frequency to ultra high frequency to super high frequency to extra high frequency. I think we're run out of adjectives for high frequencies, but that's where we sit now. So, little statistic for you. Ready? Here we go. 1 in 10 Americans think that NASA faked the moon landing. Now, I don't know how many people we have in here watching, but I'm hoping that there's no moon deniers here amongst you. But if there is, we can have a conversation afterwards if you still have some questions. Nearly 1 in 4 think that the government is hiding something about it. Now, that gap matters because conspiracy thinking usually does not begin with evidence. It starts with they're hiding something. Ooh. And then it goes shopping for memes, vibes, and tinfoil confetti that only looks suspicious under bad lighting. Which brings us to Larry Baysinger. Now, Larry Baysinger was a skeptic from Kentucky who had really one question. Could he listen in on Apollo 11 without asking NASA's permission? Without NASA knowing? Not the television broadcast, not the official feed, the astronauts themselves transmitting from the moon. Because, you see, the interesting thing about Larry is that as well as an amateur radio astronomer and a radio engineer, he had an interest in NASA. He also had an interest in astronomy, in UFOs, and other such things that were hot topics at a time when America was on the verge of landing the first men on the moon. So, but he was also skeptical. So, I forgot where I left off. So, skeptical in the sense that he was wondering if NASA was going to transmit the full feed unedited, or if there might be something secret, something hidden, something embarrassing that he would be able to hear that no one else would. So Baysinger did what real skeptics do when they suspect that they're being lied to. He tested it. Now, he's a professional radio engineer. He had a year of preparation, a steerable backyard antenna, a receiver rebuilt for one specific frequency, an understanding of all RF fundamentals, and a transmission traveling from nearly 388,000 kilometers from the lunar surface. And the result? He heard Armstrong and Aldrin directly from the moon. And the conspiracy crowd has been trying to outrun that signal ever since. Now, there's one problem. Conspirators are out there saying that it was no way possible. Not unlikely, not difficult, just physically impossible. But then they don't show the math. That's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to show you the math. I'm going to show you why it was possible and how Larry Baysinger became more or less a legend with this one simple feat. So, where are we going to start tonight? Well, let's start here. Oh, we need to talk about the claims. So, for those who don't know, let me introduce you to Jack. Jack Tracks. We're going to get to Bald Pennywise picture in a second. So this is Jack Tracks' TikTok page. Now, He has not had a single conspiracy that he has not fallen in love with, including flat Earth. And besides the fact that he's wrong on everything, he actually went out of his way to make a few special claims. And we're going to talk about those. Now, the funny thing is he says he uses this 15-year-old AI face because people have shown up at his door in white collars and badges to ask him questions. Questions about what? I don't know. It could be a warrant. It could be a bike being stolen. Who the fuck knows? He doesn't say. But he implies that they're after him because he's releasing the truth, and NASA doesn't want this information out there. So shills like me, oh, oops, sorry. Didn't mean that. So people like me who actually have a fucking background in this can actually debunk him. And he makes some very specific claims, and we're going to go over them really, really quick. Now, he has a 10-minute long video that I won't subject you to because A, I don't want to hear it because I'm tired of listening to him. But let me show you some of the claims that he makes right off the jump. Here's the first one.
Once I rose above the noise.
Okay, well, this one's only music. So he's basically saying that it was VHF 0.05 watts, chatting with Nixon, proving the Apollo 11 mission was faked. And he says that it was actually shot in a hangar at Stratford Airfield, which coincidentally is only like 4 kilometers from Larry's house. But that won't be enough. So let's let Jack say what the claims are.
My name's Jack, by the way. Let me show you my
Hopefully you guys can hear that.
research into why the moon landing is fake, and I don't get my information.
Sorry, that's the 10-minute one. I don't want to deal with that. Sorry, let's go back to this one. Where's the volume? I didn't need to see him laying in bed, that's for sure.
Yo, it's
Oh,
Jack.
thank you, Jack. There we go.
So I slayed a bunch of globies about the 123rd.
Let's skip ahead here. Hold on. He talks about how he schooled globies on where certain things were.
He's going to collect it. And
oh, let me pull up my notes. What's the timestamp I need? 3:25.
Yeah, just a little night's adventure. Guys, get easy. Apollo 11 was filmed at the 123rd. You can't get around it. I've got the proof. It is what it is. It's science. It's called the inverse square law. It's called the moon was set. It's called there's no pictures of the moon. It's called NASA said they had to use a gigantic parabolic dish to pick up the signals from a much more powerful transmitter than the ones in the PLSS backpack, which were 0.05 watts, equivalent to a child's walkie-talkie. And you guys want to sit here and pretend like you're into science and you can't explain how that was possible. You can't apply the inverse square law. You have no common sense. All you do is just read stuff that says it happened, and then you believe it. You'll die on that hill. And then eventually, you have to concede. And tonight it started with admitting that the 123rd Air Base was there.
All right. Enough of this horse shit. We're going to start off with a couple different claims here. First off, I'm taking him off the fucking screen because I don't want to listen to any of that. So he makes a couple of specific claims. Now, he talks about the 123rd Tactical Reconnaissance Wing. Now, this is the Kentucky Air National Guard. It was called up into federal service in 1968. And it was right after the USS Pueblo, and they were all sent off to Missouri. Now, when an entire squadron leaves a base, coincidentally, I live right next to an Air National Guard base. We had a squadron, multiple squadrons from that base, actually be deployed to either Afghanistan or workups prior to going to Afghanistan. There were still people on the base. The base doesn't just empty out into a ghost town. That's not how this works. And supposedly he was in the Navy, so he should know this. Now, he said that now his claim for the 123rd Tactical Reconnaissance Wing is that they returned and they were deactivated. So that means a month, 27 days or a month before the actual moon landing happened, the unit was deactivated. But he doesn't understand what that means. So let's first address this. So I was able to locate the activation and deployment log for the 123rd Tactical Reconnaissance Wing in support of the Pueblo crisis. Now, this goes in and talks about all the general officers, a little bit about their acknowledgments, things that they did, blah, 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 blah. Interesting read. And I'll have the link in the Unfornicated drive for this. So if you ever want to read it yourself, I mean, it's interesting when in relation to the Vietnam War. But what I want to get down to is, so here's what I want to point out. We have the Tactical Reconnaissance Wing. We have the Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron of the 165th. We have the 192 Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron. So you have 165th, 192, 123rd Field Maintenance Squadron. And they flew, where did they fly? Oh, the RF-101. So that's all fine and good, but let's talk about what they actually did. Now, he said that they were originally deployed in 68. So they were in Harvest Reaper in Richmond, Kentucky, and Joplin, Missouri. Some of them went to Texas. Some went to Idaho. Some went to Okinawa. Anyway, we come all the way back to '69. So 1969, back in May, May 25th, personnel from the Air Wing and personnel formerly declared surplus and sent worldwide reform at May and Shoemaker Air National Guard bases. Now, this is located right in Louisville. June 7th, deactivation ceremonies at May Air National Guard Base, Reno, Nevada. June 9th, deactivation ceremonies at Shoemaker Air National Guard Base, Louisville, Kentucky. The 123rd Tactical Reconnaissance Wings was deactivated. But wait, there's more. And returned to state control. Then the next thing that they have is that the wing and group commanders were all received by President Nixon at the White House with a special thanks and a proclamation from the president. That means this air wing was still it was under state control. It's no longer under federal control. Deactivation ceremonies with regards to federal control only. When a National Guard gets called up and put under a federal mandate, they're under federal control. When they get deactivated from federal control, they go back to state control. So everybody was still at the base. They all just now reported to the governor of Kentucky instead of the president of the United States. That's how the National Guard works. So, the base wasn't empty. Yes, the 123rd was there, and they were actually there on the base. So no empty hangars, no empty base, because the base was never fully empty. There were still admins there. There were still other things there to bring people in. It was still being run on a skeleton crew. It was never empty. So how are they going to fly the astronauts to Kentucky and film the landing in a set in one of the hangars? Because that's what his claim is. But that's just part of the problem. He also claims that the signal that Larry Baysinger received was from the airfield itself, not from the moon. Because specifically, look at, I made a diagram here. Hold on a second. I'm very proud of my diagram. Come over here. New screenshot. Here we go. Okay, so, well, that's not what I wanted because, no, that fucked it all up. Damn it. Hold on 1 second. Bear with me for 1 minute. Where is version? This one? Version 6. Here we go. Here we go. This is what I want to show you. So, there's a small problem. And the small problem is this. This little red dot, this is where Larry Baysinger lived. And this is the National Guard base. So the bearing on that is roughly, let's call it 330. Now, originally, when you say the National Guard base, it actually says the airport is the actual nomenclature, which is more like 315. But when I started looking into it, and they said that that supposedly the transmitter is over here off the east ramp, and moved it over here. I forgot when I updated this map, I screwed up the math in Excel. So here we go. So what does this say? So this is Baysinger's house right here in the middle. When he was shooting at the moon, it was over here, south of 270. The airfield is at 215. The National Guard base is at 233. That's a separation of between 60 and 80 degrees. That's not a mistake. That's an entirely different neighborhood. But let's just kind of go back a little bit here. So when he posts this picture, damn it, I don't want to pull it up. Hold on, I'll do this. When he posted this picture, he has a couple of problems going on. And this is because TikTok is a pain in the ass and doesn't let you do shit. He has a declination in numbers going down from here for the moon. Okay, he also says that It was videoed here. He also said it was transmitted from here. So, one, we already said that the actual unit was still on base. In fact, utilizing that base under state control. Didn't leave. That's problem one. Problem two is declination. He seems to think that declination is, I don't know, azimuth. That he thinks that basically that declination is, he thinks it's literally the azimuth and elevation of the moon in the sky, not that it's an equatorial celestial coordinate that you have to transfer, right? So declination doesn't tell an observer which compass heading to look at, how high to look up in the sky, or anything else like that. Now, for that, you would need historical information. And the historical information would tell you where the moon was at any given time on any given day. Now, the cool thing about that is there's a cool tool for that. So, first problem, there's people here. Second problem is that it's the wrong direction. His third problem is he says the sun set. Or not the sun, excuse me, that the moon had set. So if the moon had set, then obviously you couldn't have talked to the moon, right? You couldn't be listening in. Except when you do your homework. And you go to JPL. And you put in a date. You put in the, in UTC, by the way. You put in the, oh, look, the Earth radius. That's always fun. You also put in, you put in the Latin long. And you go through all this other fun stuff, and it talks about the air mass and stuff like that, and spits out the fact that at 2:56 UTC time, it was at 256.69 azimuth and just short of 13 degrees elevation. And then at 3:15, it was at 253 azimuth and roughly 9 degrees of elevation. And at the end, when he barely got done with Nixon's call, it was at 258 and just shy of 3 degrees. So the moon hadn't set. But Jack asked for something specific, if you remember. There's no pictures from the East Coast of the moon that night during this time from any observatory because the moon had set. So there's no moon to take a picture of. It would just be black sky. Well, obviously, we just shown that it hadn't set. But how do you find a picture for one random night from, I don't know, 60 fucking years ago? Or just short of 60 years ago? Well, coincidentally, there was. Curtis McGee for the Houston Chronicle was stationed outside Lance Armstrong's house in El Largo, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston, where he lived. And he shot this picture with the American flag and the moon above his house as Neil Armstrong was walking on the moon in July of 1969. So there is your moon picture. Now, it's not from the East Coast, it's from the middle, but why would it have to be from the East Coast? Louisville's not on the East Coast. It's more in the middle. So what's the difference between these? Well, I don't know. Why don't we find out? Hold on a second. I have the address here in a minute. Give me 1 second. Neil Armstrong lived at 1003 Woodland Drive in El Lago. This little house right here. And this whole thing was built for NASA employees and things like that at the time. And if we scroll way out, actually, you know what? No, let's do this. Now let's go to where Larry Baysinger lived. Zoom out, zoom in. There's Larry's house. Now, if we zoom out, Baysinger, Armstrong house. It's separated by about 10 degrees longitude. 10 degrees of longitude, and however much this is in latitude, I did the math. It's he's, I forgot what this one was. It's minus 91. He's minus 95. So 4 degrees longitude, apparently. It's got to be more than that, though. Hold on. I thought I was prepped, but I guess I wasn't. Sorry, he was at 85 degrees west. And 85 degrees west, 85.7. And Armstrong's house was 95. So just 9.3 degrees. So 9.3 degrees longitude between these two, as well as the change in latitude. It would make a difference, according to a calculator, of 0.18 degrees difference. So what you see here is what was available to be seen in Louisville, Kentucky. So there's your picture. So Neil Armstrong is right there at his house. Well, his wife and kids are at the house while he's up there on the moon. And Larry was at his house with his wife and daughter in the living room. They were watching it on TV. He was in the bedroom. So, Jack, I don't know what to tell you except, well, you're wrong. So, but there's something else that you're missing. Glenn Rutherford, who is the reporter, who was working with Larry Baysinger, who was the RF engineer, was helping him. One would steer the antenna, the other one would man the radio. So they would yell whenever they got a signal. It was cloudy, it was overcast. It was hard to kind of align the antenna because this wasn't an equatorial mount. This was like a bore sight. Basically, stick your head in the middle of the board and look out through the middle of it and assume where you're pointing and hope you're right. And then make fine-tune adjustments to trying to dial it in. But the moon also moves at a half degree, what is it, every hour or something like that, or whatever the drift is of the moon. So they have to constantly keep changing it, the antenna orientation, to track with the moon. As the moon moved out of phase with the antenna, they would lose signal. They would change the antenna back to the moon, they would pick up signal. Rinse, repeat. If this was coming from a terrestrial transmitter, guess what they wouldn't have to do? They wouldn't have to pointing where the antenna is. And with a separation of almost 80 degrees, the chance of them catching a side lobe from an antenna that's on the airfield, it's a little rough. Because a transmitter would have to been built on a new tower that no one noticed that was over 250 feet tall for Larry Baysinger to actually clear the line of sight to receive the signal. Besides being pointed in the wrong way, and besides the receive power being off the charts. There's problem upon problem upon problem with this hypothesis. So we can shit can this hypothesis, put it to bed, it's useless. Moon was up, squadron was there, or the air wing was there. Wrong direction, wrong power levels. Sorry, Jack, you're debunked. But now let's do the part that Jack doesn't do and fails to do. And we're going to talk about the RF engineering that took this to go into this. Hey, Max, how you doing? So this is the part that you guys are probably going to hate, but it'll be with it. It'll be worth it. So we have a brand new setup here because, hey, look, we got a camera. Yes, I have tons of freckles, by the way. Don't at me in the chat. All right, quit giving gingers a bad name. All right. So we're gonna do some of the math. We're gonna do what basically he doesn't. So what Jack does is he says is the inverse square law. And then after I corrected him and say you need to use the freeze equation and free space path loss, when I was just trying to get him to find out what he would accept for his $1,000 bounty, he changed it and then used AI. But he still claimed it was 0.05 watts, not 0.5 watts. There's the first problem. And then his path loss was way above board, which is basically ended up being the wrong frequency because he was using AI. He was using AI to do all his work. He tried to do some of the math, and it looks worse than my writing. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about. So let's start off with a little bit of info. And the funny thing is this is all going to be kind of required. Oh, shit. Hold on. Where did I put that picture at? Hold on. Oh, here we go. Okay. So this is the diagram that actual Larry drew when he was designing his antenna. It's an 8-foot by 8-foot square, 2 panels at 90 degrees with an antenna array, four dipoled. This is why I drink. 4 folded dipole antenna array in the middle. And he has chicken wire. Now, Jack makes it a point of saying that the chicken wire means it's a cheap piece of shit. Here's the thing. We can do the math real quick. But basically what it comes out to being is that here, we're going to do this real quick. All right. So you guys are going to be hating my writing by this. So lambda equals C over F. And the C over F is in hertz. Shit, it's in hertz. Okay, so lambda equals 299,792,458 over 259,700 hertz. And when we do that, it comes out to basically be equal to 1.15438 meters. So what I can do is if we can do a transformative math here that basically says what the wavelength is. So basically it would be 11.5 centimeters is the biggest amount. So the gaps in the chicken wire, the holes in the chicken wire, so to speak, have to be less than 11.5 centimeters wide for it to act like almost a solid metal reflector. Now, even the most coarsest chicken wire is only 5 centimeters. So basically the reason why he used chicken wire as a mesh screen is because A, it was inexpensive, and B, it acted like it was a solid metal reflector. So it collected more of the signal and pointed it into that corner where the antenna arrays were, so he could receive more of that signal and hopefully have more gain. So that's why he used chicken wire. Now, this was built on a 12-foot by 4-foot frame of 2x4s, and he had a motor on it, and it was all grounded, earth ground, things like that. All this fun stuff. So now remember, I said Larry was an RF engineer. He was working for an AM radio station. He's very familiar with this sort of frequency band on a day-to-day basis. So he knew how to build an antenna. He knew how to build a radio. He was borderline genius in his 20s as an RF engineer. So while we don't have all the information available, we have a lot of the information is available, and we can infer a lot of the missing information by what was available at that time in this age, in this time period, and also what someone like Larry Baysinger, who was an RF engineer, would know about and have access to. Hey, look, there we go. I'm not sure if I like having an overhead camera, but I do. It's there for right now. So, since we know what the antenna is and everything else, we can do math to say what the projected mouth width of a 90-degree corner is based off the math and everything else. So it basically comes out to be D equals, what I have it as, 2 times the length times the sine of beta divided by 2. So we know that the length is 8 feet, and we know that the beta is 90 degrees. So we just plug this in. So it's basically 2 times 8 sine 45 degrees. And that basically equals out to be 11.314 feet. So that was the mount. So then we also have the longitudinal dimension, which was 8 feet. So basically what we can do is we can take 8 feet, multiply by 11.31 feet, and basically you get 8.41 meters squared. That is the aperture of the whole antenna. So knowing the size of this antenna, we can do things like find out the half power bandwidth. Now, the half power bandwidth means basically it estimates the main beam width in the 2 principal aperture planes. So in these 2 planes, you have a vertical and a horizontal plane. So it's saying, how big is this beam width? I'm not going to go into some of this other math because it's a little bit, we'll be doing math all night. So some of this is stuff that you can actually look up. The half beam width is approximately K times lambda divided by D, which K is, I use 52, which is a conservative coefficient for a corner reflector antenna. The lambda was what we said, 1.154. The distance was 2.438 meters, and the mouth was 3.448 meters, because that was all derived from 11 feet and 8 feet. You replace them all out, and you get 27 degrees and 19 degrees, plus some change. Again, what does this tell you? This tells you nothing right now except how big the antenna opening is and how wide of a reception area it is for a beam. Now, Larry's not transmitting, he's only receiving. Some of this is more applicable to transmissions, but it still applies in both ways. But I'm just getting to show you what some of the math is that you have to do that no one else has done on this, especially not Jack, who just said inverse square law or said free space path loss and said it was done. So now we have to talk about the aperture gain estimate. So something that was designed like this has a very specific gain associated with it. So when you take that, when you take the width, hold on. So it's the gain in dBi is 10 log 10 times G, and G is eta times 4 pi A for aperture divided by lambda to the second power. Blah, 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 right? We're not going to go through all this. So basically what it comes out to is that the ETA is the efficiency of the antenna for capturing a signal. So if something is built in a lab with precision materials, CNC machine, everything that's not available right now in 1969, you would get really close to 100, probably close to 90% or things like this. A crude antenna might be an efficiency of 50%. But we're talking about what's the actual gain itself that it's going to do to the signal that comes into it. So as the weak signal comes into the antenna, because it's shaped like this, the signal comes in and is basically concentrated from this wide mouth opening into a central point. And that concentrates the signal. That gain, depending on the efficiency, could go from 16 dB to 19 dB. Not a huge span. I'm guessing that if Larry Baysinger was a professional RF engineer, he would probably get close to 100. Let's say 75 to 100. We'll claim around 17.7 dB. Okay, that's the middle ground, 75%. Now, we do the whole sweep when we get to the end to do the actual link budget to show worst case, best case, and we can move some of the numbers around or everything else like that. So unless you do the actual math that you see here, or based off of here, and based off everything else that we did, you would not know what the gain is of the antenna. You would have to go off of what AI told you or what a roundabout figure told you. You can also go to modeling software and figure it out that way. It's was it 4NEC2 that you can put in a bunch of parameters and it could plot out what your polarization pattern is going to be and what the gain is and things like that. So you could do a guess of say, oh, I don't know, it's 12 dB. Well, you'd be wrong because I'm at least 5 dB up and 3 dB is half power. That's the difference because everything is logarithmic. So enough of the antenna. The antenna's done. Yay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into some of the other stuff that, again, people use AI for, and people who are engineers don't use AI for, because there's one thing we know, AI does not do math. So we need to convert the power of the transmit into from watts to decibels. So I did that backwards. I'm having a great day. Watts to dBm. Okay. All right. So the power in dBm equals 10 log 10 power and transmit in watts divided by 0.001 watts. We plug that in. The only variable is this PTW, which is 0.5. And I mean, you can, I don't know, should I bring up a log, a calculator on here? I don't think it really matters, does it? Share that. That's going to be difficult. All right. So basically what this comes out to be is 26.99 dB. So let's just call it 27 because I like easy numbers. Now, Jack originally said it was 0.05. So 0.05 has a difference of 10 dB. So mine comes out of 27 dB. His came out to be 17 dB, which basically is a fraction. It's shit, what's the power of that? I forget. I can't do the math in my head. Anyway, there's a specific. Let's find out. I'm trying to find my source documentation. There was a Apollo Experience Report voice communications that were put together by John Dobbs. There was also another one that was put together, a post-flight analysis of the Manned Spacecraft Center from the NASA Manned Spacecraft Center Apollo 15 mission report. And there was also performance characteristics of the Apollo astronaut backpack antenna, which was put together by J.F. Lindsay. And there was also Ralph Sawyer, who also had the documentation of the Apollo lunar communications. All of this stuff told us everything about the communications that we need to actually figure this out. We know what the power is. It was 0.5, not 0.05. We also know a bunch of other things that we're going to get into here real quickly. Again, I'm not going to do math all the way across this. I don't want to bore the shit out of all you guys. So Rutherford and Baysinger have been interviewed multiple times. And Rutherford, as a reporter, reported it for the Courier, which was the Louisville paper at the time. And it actually showed up 2 days after the moon landing in section B on the front page. It was called Lunar Eavesdropping. Now, the way this actually works is that there's VHF links that went from Armstrong to Aldrin. And then there was VHF links that went from Armstrong to the limb and Aldrin to the limb. And then the limb used S-band UHF to talk to Houston, whether it be through Goldstone antenna, Honeysuckle Creek, or Parks. That's also how all the audio and all the video was transmitted. So yes, those are very large antennas. Just because you use large antennas, because they're already built, doesn't necessarily mean you need to use large antennas, especially when you're trying to carve out the audio part, which is this much of bandwidth versus this much of bandwidth. So you can take the antenna claim and stick it up your ass, Jack. Now, we're going to start doing some more of the math. So now we're going to talk about the distance from the moon to the Earth and what's going to happen for this. So what we need to do is we need to do free space path loss. Let me put this in the window here. So free space path loss is basically the least or the least amount of loss you're going to incur between 2 points. And it's very specific. So the FSPL in dB is equal to a constant of 3245, which is what we need for transferring megahertz and kilometers, plus 20 log 10. And this is going to be the frequency in megahertz, plus 20 log, log 10 of the distance, which is 388,117 kilometers. Put that onto a scientific calculator, and what you get, we get 192.58 dB loss. That's the loss of just the span, just by the distance in the frequency between Larry Baysinger's house in Louisville, Kentucky, and the Sea of Tranquility on the moon. That is a huge number. Yes, path loss on S-band will be way higher, which is why you need a bigger antenna. You need more gain. Yeah, math and formal reasoning system is not well addressed by LLMs, to be fair. Yeah, no, you're right. It's not. Now, there are calculators for this. So I could go online and use calculators, but you have to know what you're looking for, and just plugging in numbers and having it spit out. I figured you guys would want to see where it actually comes from. Ta-da, here you go. All right, so now we got free path loss at 192.5 decibels. Well, that's a lot. Now, when Jack asked his AI, it came up with 217. He has since corrected that. So I guess he figured out that he should probably ask more than one AI and see what answers he gets, or ask for correct math, or whatever you have to do to make AI do math right. But it was wrong originally by a lot. So now he keeps complaining about the inverse square law. Now, the interesting thing about inverse square law is, one, it doesn't include the frequency. And that's basically, it's a measurement in watts per meter squared. And what it does is it basically takes a transmitted signal, and it's transmitted from a point outward in a sphere. So it's going in every direction all at once. Inverse square law. When you have a directional antenna, you're not going everywhere all at once. You're going in one direction. Now, the PLSS antenna was a whip antenna. It was just a stick sticking up straight out of the back of the backpack. But here's the funny thing. You can't just use inverse square law, because there's a receiving station with a very specialized antenna that was built for this purpose, with a very specialized receiver built for this purpose. So it's like basically a tenth of the math to claim that it doesn't work. He saw 192 and said, nope, no receiver can receive that. We're done. It's below the noise floor of the Earth. It's below the noise floor of the receiver. It's below the galactic center noise floor. There's no way anyone can receive a signal that low. Game over. We're done. Well, we've already done 4 other equations that he hasn't. So let's see what else he missed. Because power density in space doesn't tell you jack shit, really. But the free space path loss does. And the free space path loss is actually part of a larger equation called the freeze equation, which takes all these other equations and all these other numbers we have, put them together to say, does it work? So we also have the effective aperture of the receiving antenna, which is basically, it converts the receive gain into effective collecting area, and then you apply that to the incoming power density. Basically, it's 8.4 meters squared is basically the area, is the effective aperture of this antenna design. But now we get to the freeze equation. And anybody who's ever dealt, I just started writing something arbitrarily, I have no idea. Anyone who's ever dealt with any sort of RF has dealt with the freeze equation. So what this measures is the power at the receive station, okay? So this combines the transmit power, the transmit antenna gain, the wavelength, the distance, and then also the receive antenna gain, and puts it all together in any other sort of bonuses or subtractions, and it puts it all into an equation. So the power receive is going to be the power of the transmit multiplied by the gain of the transmit multiplied by the gain of the receive multiplied by the lambda divided by 4 pi d squared, or the OS or the FSPL. So very simply put, I'm going to plug in all the numbers for you, okay? So PR equals Oh shit, what did I say it was? 27? Fuck, I forgot where I left off here. Hold on a second. Here we go. So 26.99, because that's the transmit power, right? We multiply that by the gain of the transmit, which is basically it's just only 1 dB because it's just a whip antenna. But NASA engineers things that they actually measured this and said it could go anywhere from -1 to 0 to +2. So I'm assuming Armstrong was looking at the Earth, gave it a +1, not necessarily a +2, somewhere in the middle. Plus the receiving gain, which is the ideal aperture, we said it was going to be like 19 dB. Minus 192.52 dB, which is going to be the path loss, and -0 for miscellaneous for right now. This equals up to be 145.54 decibels. Now, let's call that the let's call that the optimistic side. Now let's look at the conservative side. The conservative side is going to be a little different. It's going to be 26.99 -2. Oh, by the way, these are pluses, not minuses. I can't read today. Sorry. -2 plus 16 minus 192.52. I'm sure Patron Braun's yelling at me in the chat right now that I haven't looked into. And -2, and this equals out to be negative 153.53. So best case scenario is this is the signal that's coming in. Worst case scenario, this is the signal coming in. What does that mean? Well, this is what it means. That tells you what their C power is. But the question is, can you're pointing up at the sky. Can you receive a signal that's going to be louder than the noise? That's what we call signal to noise ratio. So there's noise around us. The receiver has noise. The antenna has noise. The Earth has noise. If you're pointing at the sky, the galactic center has noise. The moon and the sun have noise. Everything emits noise. And there are different frequencies and different intensities. Now, thanks to Patch von Braun, he looked up the Haslam map for me, which is basically a map of the galactic center as it would look up in the night sky. And by giving him how big the antenna was, how big the aperture was, and where we were located, and what direction we were pointing into, he was able to discern that we were pointing away from the galactic center. So if you point right at the galactic center, it's very bright, it's very loud. You're not going to receive a lot of signals unless those signals are very loud. But when you point away from that signal, actually, let me find, what was that? What was the document? Hold on. I'm trying to get to my sources. All right, here we go. This is the Haslam map. Hold on, I got to see if Patch is yelling at me. Yes, Tay. I will translate this all at the end. Just keep up with me. Deal with the math for a little bit. I promise you, I'll do all the work. Just follow along as best you can. When we get to the end, I will show you how we do. We're just going to be doing adding and subtracting. It's very easy. PR is power receive. PT is power transmit. Yes, this is the log scale map. So basically, I'm just using this as more of an example patch. I'd probably want to use the linear one if I'm correct, but if you point at the galactic center, where it's red, noisy. You point away from the galactic center in the blue, not noisy. And all this is measured in Kelvin. My volume is low as fuck. I'm almost peaking. So, and the reason why I'm using this patch is because there's bigger places for me to point to. So, less Kelvin, more Kelvin, even somewhere in the middle of Kelvin. You guys follow? All right, so everything's fine except for you, Calder. So find your volume, dude. So you're muted as fuck. CSA, do you have the CMB on your wall? Because it's kind of similar. So the interesting thing enough is here, let me go back, is you can download, these studies were done at different wavelengths. So this one was 408. They also did one at 1.4. They also did another one at 1.4. And you can see that there's differences. Hydrogen alpha map. So now I lucked out because a friend of Patch is one of the guys who helped with that particular study of the 408 megahertz. So he had an inside kind of like deal. So he called up his buddy and sent him a message. He replied and Patch gave it to me. So we played a little telephone. So this whole video would have already been shot down and we would already be done with half the math if it wasn't for Patch helping out. So Patch, I owe you one. Thank you very much. In the event Jack pays me, Patch, I will split it with you. So because we have this, we have to know where we're pointing and things like that. So I can't do that. I'm not a radio astronomer like Patch, who does this shit before he even has his breakfast. This is his expertise, not mine. So do I appeal to authority? Nah. I consider it more like using the valuable resources that are in our community to help out with something. So Aldebaran, this brings up an interesting thing, right? You're trusting me to know how to do it. Just like I'm trusting Patch to know how to do this. Because I'm not sure how to, I look at that and I see the iris star on. Okay, I don't know what else to say. But I know that Patch does this daily. So I turn to the experts to help me out. Now, can I do the free space path loss and all the other things? Yeah, I did most of that. I still went to Patch for some help because he knows this shit a lot better than I do. He's been doing it nonstop. I quit doing it decades ago, and I'm still I have to go back to my reference books to find out what the damn equation is, write down the equation is so I can figure out what they are, and then plug in my variables once I figure out the variables. So trust me, the payoff's at the end. We're just going to do some little addition, some subtraction. We'll get to the end, and I'll show you where error bars are and show you where the signal is. That's what the payoff's going to be. I have a poster of the galaxy in different wavelengths. I took from a conference I volunteered at as a student worker. You didn't take. You strategically took, or what is this? I've been meaning, hold on. I've been meaning to do a new declassified video, and I was going to do it on what we call the E4 Mafia. Now, the E4 Mafia, is just what it is what it sounds like. Those who are E4s are considered non-commissioned officers, means you're been in long enough to know how everything works and what you can get away with, but not in a position to actually lead anything. So steal is it's to strategically transfer equipment to alternative locations. Permanently borrowed is another one too, yes. But I've hesitated doing a video on the E4 Mafia because even though I was a member of the E4 Mafia, it doesn't exist. It's a figment of anyone's imagination who ever said otherwise. But I digress. That actually might be fun, but we'll come back to that. We have our own acronyms and everything else. So it's let's put it this way: if you want shit to get done and you don't want to know about it and want plausible deniability, you go to your E4 to go do it. That's basically it. So steal is a strategically transfer equipment to an alternative location, is our way of saying, yeah, we borrowed it and moved it. Yeah, plastic. I didn't drop anything, so hopefully it wasn't me. Realize I keep cutting my head off by sitting up way close, and I need to. And I realize this shirt makes me look like I have nothing but tattoos on. I probably should have picked a different color when I bought this one. It's a little too close to skin tone, but I digress. Either way. So what do we do with this system noise floor? Well, we have to do a couple of different things. We have to figure the Haslam estimate, which again, we went to Patch von Braun. He came back with roughly 25K. So we also have a receiver noise figure. Now, the interesting thing is in 1969, electronics were very different than they are now. So the question is how sensitive could a receiver get by an RF engineer? Well, he had a couple different options. He could have built what they call a par amp, which is an amplifier that amplifies the circuit. He could have also built a non-cooling, non-cooled, what? Patch, help me out. What was that called? Non-cooling transistor or vacuum tube amplifier, things like that. I forgot what it was. Basically, uncooled low noise amplifier. Thank you. So prior to this actually being this was being worked on around the same time as the moon landing. A low noise amplifier would have to be cooled cryogenically, right? It had to be very cooled. It was cooled externally. But around this time, we started getting advances in electronics. Some of the advances that we had was amplifiers that did not need to be cooled, because if it gets hot, it could heat dissipate and not overwork or overfry itself. Back then, it would have been a MOSFET. Yeah, MOSFET. Yes. So we know that what was available to him was a 1 decibel noise floor by using an uncooled low noise amplifier or a par amp. Now, here's the thing. Is it something that was common to a hobbyist? No. Is it something that an RF engineer that was in the field day to day would know about? Absolutely. Is it something he could get his hands on? Absolutely. It's one of those things like, if you know what to ask, you can find it. So then we have to take that noise figure and basically do math to transform that to a receiver temperature. We also need to take into idea the lunar noise and the beam dilution, which it's minimal in this case, not a big deal. And then we had to take into consideration system noise temperature with the front end, which is what's called the radio, that loss. So there's that. That's where the 1 dB comes into. And we do all this crazy ass math, and we get that a favorable 1 decibel class system temperature range was approximately about 105 to 150K. The 1 dB front end contributes to 75K of the receiver noise. The moon contributes 0.1 K to antenna temperature, not a big deal. And the temperature, no, wait, beam. Come on. Dude, I'm about ready to throw this out the window. So we had lunar beam, which is what do we say? It was 0.1. We had receiver noise, which was going to be about 75K. And we had a system noise of about a total system noise about 105 to 150K. So that's adding in basically, let's see, 75K for the 75K for the receiver. There's a whole equation that goes into this, and it's not my stuff I do. So the last equation we do is we take the Johnson-Nyquist thermal noise power, where we basically take all those power ranges that we have. We add up all the noise that is in the system, add it all up, and we convert it to a decibel. When we convert it to the decibel, that's the noise number. If your signal is higher than the noise number, you have signal. Now, we're talking about radio, which is analog. Could you possibly do something to maybe increase your signal level, or to be able to maybe delve into the noise level? You're talking about an analog system, it's signal. So it could be anything, as in a connector to the human with the earphones on, being able to tell the difference between somebody else who can't hear it. It's not a brick wall, but you can't really go down into it very easily. And even if you're on the other side of the noise, we're on the plus side, and your signal's higher noise, doesn't mean you're hearing anything intelligible either. There's a lot of different, let's call it like a scale that slides. And it's a lot of gray areas, because it's going to be based on everyone from the person with the headphones on to everything else. So, and this isn't even including things like side lobes, back lobes, and other things else. So there's a lot of different things that you can go through. But what we found out is that by doing all this, is that the best case scenario is that it came in at about 145 decibels. And the worst case scenario came at 146.5 decibels. So 146.6 to 145.1, and that's basically 1.5 kilohertz equivalent bandwidth. Again, we're going to come to this end. All right, we're going to add it all up in a second. Now, there was something else that we were able to see. Where did it go? Hold on. So there was also multipath going on. So as he's recording this, and I'll play the recordings for you, it is kind of hard to hear. Now, remember, this was recorded on mag tape in 1969, stored in a basement or in a closet until 2009, when he finally got around to digitizing it and sending it off to somebody. So 40 years in a box on mag tape that's been used previously for other recordings. We don't know what the condition is of this. So if Larry Baysinger says he heard something and has a transcript of what he heard, I'm going to trust that. I'm not going to try to untangle a 40-year-old mag, a mag tape recording, and try to discern what's out of it and say, how can anyone understand that? Well, is it low quality? Is it high quality? Would it sound better on a reel than it would digitize? There's all these different things that you can add to. Someone use AI to increase it. There's all these different tools that we have now that we didn't have then. However, I'm going to take the person who did it over whether or not I can hear it, because me playing it over the internet, over YouTube, where there's compression, everything else, does it matter? Are you going to be able to hear it? I have no fucking clue. I know that when I hear it and download it, I can't make very much of it out. So what happens is when you hear the recording is it phases in and out. You'll hear some words and some sentences, and then it'll phase out the noise. And then it'll come back in and you'll hear some more words in mid-sentence and everything else. Then it phases out the noise. So think of it as almost like a needle. It'll start drifting one way, it'll start drifting another way. If it's in the middle, it's recording fine. But if it starts drifting one way or the other, that drift, where one way or the other, is what happens as the moon moves. As the moon moves, especially towards the end, when it got towards the end of the horizon, his signal. Now remember, he also recorded 35 minutes of recordings. We have 6 minutes. That's all that's been digitized. That's all that was salvageable. So as the moon moved towards the horizon, what happened is it increased the angle to the antenna. So it allowed the ground reflections to come up. And what that would do is do two different things. It would add constructive interference, which means it would amplify the signal going into the antenna if it was in phase. If it was out of phase for any reason, it would cause destructive interference, which would cause the noise to go higher, the signal to drop down. So that's what you hear on this tape. So those are the fingerprints that we look for in things like multipath and trying to identify how these radio waves propagated and how they would be able to receive. Here's the funny thing. We know he did it, and I'll play it for you. But does the math show that he did it? Well, yeah. When we add up all the math, it basically comes up to be that he is about, where do I have it? Hold on. It's between 1 or 0.5 and 3 dB above where things are. So when we add in the loss and everything else, and we add in all of the noise that goes in the background, we're looking at where the signal comes in and where the signal is at. So he had anywhere from a +4 dB to a +0.5 dB above to close the circuit, to close the link budget. As an RF engineer doing a point-to-point between two buildings in downtown Boston, 0.5 or 5 dB wasn't enough for me. It had to be upwards of 10, 15 dB because I had to deal with rain fade and everything else. 5 gets you barely audible, intelligible conversations. Actually, I guess 3 would probably be barely audible, intelligible conversations. 5 gets it a little better to where you can actually make out full sentences and things like that as opposed to individual words. But again, it's subjective. It comes down to people who are listening. So a trained RF engineer who built a signal, who built an entire system, had a year to do it, specifically built for one purpose and one purpose only, to see if NASA was lying. Used all his skills, used all his training, used all his brain power, things conspirators don't have, and used all his experience to build this system. And became a legend for it because no one else had done it and no one else thought it was possible. He built a Frankenstein of an antenna using chicken wire, 2x4s, and metal angle iron. He built the motor for it. He took a Korean War tank radio, stripped it, rebuilt the whole front end because it didn't cover the right frequency range, to purposely build it for one frequency and one frequency only. And that alone, for me, is the proof that we went to the moon, because a skeptic in Louisville heard it and recorded it. Now, what does it sound like? Well, two things. When we talk about multipath and everything else constructive, that constructive interference can actually increase upwards of maybe 3 dB to the signal. Destructive could cause negative 3 dB to the signal. So those decibels that you're adding and minus when you're already that close could be a big benefit or a shitty benefit or a giant penalty. It's not like he recorded 35 minutes of an FM broadcast from a local radio station. He didn't plug in a mixtape. He recorded an audible signal that was fading in and out due to the complexities of the circuit itself. So what did it sound like? Well, here. Play it for you. No, that's not what I want. Stop it.
When I kick my foot, it's very old with no atmosphere here, just gravity. They seem to leave, and most of them have about the same angle of departure and velocity. As far as I stand, a large portion of them will impact at a certain distance out.
Right now we're at 48. So there's noise and noise. So about 115 you'll hear Armstrong. So this is 5.5 minutes, but here, let me move it up to 115. There's a lot of noise here in the beginning part. Right here is when you're going to hear Armstrong.
I've noticed several times going from the sunlight into the shadows, and just as I go in, I catch an additional reflection off the lens. That, along with the reflection off my face onto the visor, makes visibility very poor, just at the transition sunlight into the shadow. I essentially have so much glare coming onto my visor, shadow. So helmet actually gets shadow, and then it takes a short while for my eyes to adapt to lighting conditions. Sometimes the shadow area, visibility, as we said before, is not too great, but both sides up. We can put the footprints we have and the general condition of the soil. And after being out in the sunlight for a while, it takes, I'm watching the alien on the cable. Okay, yeah, they got your right foot. Right foot. Off your toes, your toes, look at it. Yeah, it's still looking at it. Come in. Okay, yes, clear now. Thank you.
There you go. You just heard Armstrong and Aldrin as recorded by Baysinger, talking about Buzz standing on a cable. Armstrong telling him to lift up his foot. He thought he was clear, but his toe was still hooked on it. And I'm sure Buzz would have fell on his face. The blue color of my boot, was it the left boot? Yeah, maybe. So yeah, I can I think I can pull up that because hold on. Was a link. I gotta find it. Let me find the link. I had it up earlier. But NASA's was obviously a lot clearer. So that's it. Game over. Where's Jack? Where's my $1,000? But wait, you won't accept any of this. You won't accept a math that was 1 dB to 6 dB higher than the noise floor to be able to hear it. You won't hear that an actual RF engineer contributed to this by the name of Phil Karn. Now, Phil Karn also does debunking of moon landing deniers, based in San Diego. He is also a legend in RF, and he's worked at Bell Labs, Qualcomm, and I think AT&T. He is a very well-known ham radio operator. And he specifically is talking to the person on this, who made this. And he's talking about, he's been debunking. I was delighted to hear of another, we'll come back to that. By the way, there's an error in the newspaper article on this point. Apollo S-band communications were not encrypted. In fact, because amateur radio operators were receiving the S-band communications, they decided to encrypt that, and you can no longer listen in. However, he talks about the S-band downlink had two modes, wide PM and wideband FM, and the PM mode was used during flight, and the PM mode was necessary for TV. It was kind of like basically put all your bandwidth into the TV, make it get there. So because of all this, because it's S-band, you need a very large antenna because you have a lot more attenuation loss. You need more gain on S-band because it's higher. So Larry, as he says right here, Larry made the right choice in going for VHF during the Apollo EVA. Now here's the part that's important, right? Important. This is another RF engineer who's doing this. What Larry actually heard was the VHF AM transmitter on Neil Armstrong's backpack. It sent his own voice plus that of Buzz Aldrin to a receiver on the limb that retransmitted to the Earth on S-band. But he wasn't listening to the S-band. He was listening to the transmissions that were going to the limb. Larry could hear both astronauts because Buzz Aldrin's backpack transmitted his voice on a second frequency to a receiver on Armstrong's backpack, and then combined those two to send to the limb. So if you're in telecom, it's kind of like a token ring. How you like that, geek? I weaseled that one in there. So a third transmitter on the limb relayed to Houston and to the astronauts. That's the S-band. And they each had a receiver, so no extra relaying was required. It's truly remarkable that a radio link intended to operate over just a few hundred feet was nonetheless audible all the way down from Earth. But I've done the numbers for Larry's setup. It's quite marginal, but doable, and his recordings are about what I expect if everything worked right. So here's the other part, too. You only hear the astronauts talking. You never hear Capcom. You never hear NASA. You never hear anything else. You only hear what's transmitted from the moon to the Earth, because anything transmitted from the Earth to the moon is not in the line of sight of Kentucky. But let's just say the math, Jack doesn't want to believe the math. He doesn't want to pay out the $1,000. He doesn't want to show that it actually works. He doesn't want to understand that I just disproved that it could have been transmitted from there because the receive levels and line of sight from the airfield do not match. No, none of that works. Don't want to talk about the fact that, they had to change the antenna. Let's say he says that's anecdotal, things like that. Well, if you wonder the kind of person that Larry Baysinger was, it's this. After he did this interview for, by the way, this was with, who was this with? Graney, C. Graney of the Community and Technical College there in Louisville. After he did this interview and did an interview with Graney and talked to him and stuff like that, he sent a letter afterwards. This is in 2009. After our exchange of email yesterday, I spent some time digging through the boxes of stuff that are being stored temporarily, I hope, in my basement, also called lab, studio, and workshop. Patch knows all about this. And found the previously mentioned tape recordings. To the skeptic, these recordings offer no real proof that we actually received the signals directly from the moon. He acknowledges this. In fact, I have no proof other than the word of my partner in the project, Mr. Glenn Rutherford, who I've spoken to. He was the reporter, who was there at the time they were made, having been involved with just about every aspect of the project, from antenna construction to standing listening watches at the receiver. Glenn knows carefully I tried to ensure the integrity of the project. Without getting too deep into the technical details like we just did, let me just say that our best evidence that the signals we were receiving actually originated on the moon is in the fact that as the moon moved across the sky and out of the beam or pattern of the antenna, the signals would fade, become very noisy, and then disappear. Realigning the antenna towards the moon would restore the signals. Then two was the fact that we were hearing what was also being produced on, being broadcast on television, but delayed by 5 to 10 seconds. They were getting the audio 5 to 10 seconds before the TV was. So his wife in the other room was getting it 10 seconds after him. We knew this to be standard practice by NASA. By delaying the audio transmissions received, they could blip out or edit anything the astronauts might say, like the word fuck, that would not be in their best interest before broadcasting it to the general public, or like maybe aliens or UFOs. I don't fucking know. This reinforced our belief that we were hearing was the actual transmissions from the moon and not some spurious emission from a local TV station's audio transmitter, because it didn't fucking move. I'll continue to search my archives in hopes of finding some of the photographs of our listening posts and the big directional antenna we used for this project. And I already showed you a couple of those. Now, that should be enough for any normal person, right? Yep, Blackburn, you're right. Nuh-uh. But wait, there's more. Not any more math, not any more else. There was a radio observatory in Germany who also listened in to Apollo 11. Now, Professor Heinz Kaminsky was able to make a recording. And what they did is they took the recording and they overlaid on a different channel, NASA's, to combine the two recordings. So we have a 20-meter dish, a parabolic dish in Germany that was able to hear the landing of Apollo 11, but nothing after that, because the moon set in Germany at that point. What Germany was able to do, to listen to. Now, granted, this is a 60-foot antenna, not an 8-foot antenna. But again, you're going to hear a difference in the quality of the audio.
Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. That's 30 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. 1.5. 30 seconds. Forward, just. Good. Ready? Contact light. Okay, engine stop. ATA at a descent. Mode control both auto, descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. 413 is in.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Much better. Much better. But again, when they did this, the moon was on the horizon. So if another amateur site can do this, why couldn't somebody with this background do this in Kentucky? Welcome to RF Engineering. Now, if anyone wants to go over like the use of the different antennas, during the EVA, there was a lot of switching by NASA to different video feeds because Parks didn't get it right off the get-go. It was from Goldstone to Honeysuckle Creek in Australia. So Goldstone carried the audio, I believe, for the entire EVA or the entire landing and EVA. But the video was handled first in Goldstone, but they're having technical problems where the picture was inverted. Then they had, it was negative. They had technical problems going in Goldstone. So they switched to Honeysuckle, which was also already receiving the signal. They were using honeysuckle for quite some time, but then they had to real-time troubleshoot it by switching back over to goldstone again, realizing it still wasn't fixed, back to honeysuckle, then onto the giant Parkes antenna, which made life a lot easier for everybody involved. Yes, the moon had already set in Germany behind the Earth, over the horizon. That's how that works. So, math doesn't lie. Independent verification from someone else doesn't lie. was the signal theoretically displaced? Could have been. Oh, by the way, Fretnor. Guess what? That was West Germany, by the way. That site, coincidentally, was was often in the news as it received transmissions from Russian and American space vehicles because of where it was located. So they listened to a lot of shit. They also recorded some of the field sequential color TV transmissions from the lunar rovers on the moon. And then they were also to pick up some biomedical data and voice. So. Yes, Ace Fox, that's exactly it. Drifted beyond the laws of Flurf perspective, convergence zones, and the diffraction limit. Yes, absolutely. So this right here, let me bring it back up. Nope, not that. Where'd he go? Hold on, bear with me. Right here. This antenna, this RF engineer in Louisville, Kentucky, is the one who made it to where no one can ever deny a moon landing happened. There was also additional ham radio operators who, learning what Larry Baysinger did, recorded Apollo 17, 2 stations independent of each other on Long Island. Larry Baysinger was actually called in by Collins Radio to have an interview to find out how he did it, because they weren't sure how he was able to do it. But of course, they ran the numbers with their own RF engineers, claimed Larry a genius, and probably offered him a job. NASA also had him come in and interview. He's been on a couple other interviews. Right now, he's 85 years old. Jack claims he's been disappeared, but he's 85 years old. His FCC license is now expired. I'm guessing he's in a retirement home. I haven't seen any obituaries or anything else like that, but he is relaxing and enjoying whatever hobby he wants to do. Glenn Rutherford is actually a few years younger than him. He's also in his 80s. He does model trains. He's retired editor for a bunch of different papers. He was a reporter, editor-in-chief, and retired. And now still lives in Louisville, Kentucky. Still doing things that makes him happy as a retired professional would. Despite that, I've had conversations with Glenn Rutherford, and to sum it up best would be this right here. This is from what was this one? No, that was that. I want this is from BBC Radio. I'm only going to play a small snippet of it, but I want you to hear a specific part. In fact, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mute this, and I'm going to find the part. Hold on a second.
My name is Glenn Rutherford. I am a 66-year-old newspaper editor.
Second, sorry. I didn't pause it, and you missed part of it.
My name is Glenn Rutherford. I am a 66-year-old newspaper editor in Louisville, Kentucky. I was 23 years old in 1969 when my friend Larry Baysinger came up with this notion. I need to preface everything by saying he is really and truly one of the smartest individuals I've ever run into in my life.
So there's a compliment for Larry. He was, and this is something that Glenn says to this day, that Larry was one of the smartest people he has ever met in his life. And I think it's pretty evident that Larry Baysinger was very intelligent, very good at his job, and became a legend specifically because he pulled off the impossible. And it's not that it was necessarily impossible. It was implausible because no one thought that it would work. But yet, 2 different stations did it with 2 different setups, 2 different parts of the actual landing. So that's my proof that the moon landings happened. Yes, flirt challenges are fake. I will not get the $1,000. Because not only did I disprove everything that Jack said, showed him a picture from Houston around the same at the time of the moonwalk that showed the moon in the air, showed the JPL that shows the moon was not set from Louisville, showed the debunked the whole idea that it was shot in some random Air National Guard base in fucking Kentucky. I guess Stanley Kubrick had a summer home there. That's why they chose Kentucky. Showed that the base was still active and still in use under state control for a National Air Guard. And yeah, verified that he was pointing the signal the wrong way. Couldn't have been a direct side lobe, not from 80 degrees difference. Astronomy Live. Yes. You will. And I'll be there for it. Is Max up and running right now? If Max is up and running, I'll send you guys over to Max. I don't really got anything else. I was just going to hang out and see if you guys wanted to drink more and see if there's anything other stupid shit you guys want to talk about. Oh, Kubrick insisted that it be filmed at location. You must have a house in the area then. Let me get to my fucking thing here. Hold on a second. Let me mute this tab to start with, because the last thing I want to do is listen to myself fucking talk and echo, because that's fucking fun. But look, if that's the case, Astronomy Live, I will be happy to be sitting there with you, still drinking rum as we debunk shit going forward. How's that? Because I'll probably move to someplace warmer eventually. We can come up with other ideas for science that the young folk can do. Yes, Calder, I heard that. I heard that. Who was it? Sean Hawkins was covering QE's live. I didn't get a chance to watch it. I had a bunch of other shit going on. I was trying to finish putting together all this stuff. This high quality fucking presentation you guys saw. So should I send you guys over to Max then? Let's see. Nope. Hold on. I pressed the wrong fucking button. Shit. Let's try this again. Here we go. Live. Let's edit this. Where do I put this? Hold on a second. Redirect. There we go. Yeah, we're going to send you guys all over to Max, who's covering Witsit versus Jaren post TFE. Oh, that should be fucking fun. You know what? I'll see you guys over there. Oh, Jay, thanks for the 10 joules. I appreciate that. I didn't see any super chats I missed. Help me out if I did. I don't think so. I don't think I did. No, just the joules. Cool. I tend to forget that shit. So I want to make sure that everyone got a chance to be called out. I'd like to again thank Patch Von Braun for his help, for helping me understand some of the shit that I fucking had no clue. I didn't realize that there's a whole different part of engineering that goes into when you point into the sky. And I thank him for being patient and help me understand that. That being said, it's been fun. I hope you guys learned something. I know it's a lot of math, a lot of everything else, but just when you add up all the numbers, it goes from 1 dB to 6 dB above the number, which means it's entirely plausible. And that's using conservative numbers, not ideal, perfect lab environment numbers. We're using conservative numbers that are the most plausible for a certain error margin, and it still closes the loop on the link budget. So there is no way possible that it was a local signal, no way possible that he didn't have the opportunity to receive it with the equipment that he created for this. So that being said, we landed on the moon 6 times. And they walked on the moon. They put on reflectors on the moon. You can bounce radio off the moon. There's no firmament between us and the moon. So your firmament has to be at least 388,000 kilometers away. Make that work. All right. With that being said, I'm going to kick you guys over to Max. Anything else I'm missing? Nope. Okay. All right. I will see you guys over at Max's. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for my TED Talk. Thank you for doing some RF engineering. Hopefully I didn't bore you guys too much. I promise we won't do a whole lot of math for a while, because I know that all that math just broke all of the other flirts, because they don't even know what 20 log 10 means or how to punch it into a scientific calculator. Nor are they familiar with sines and cosines, or what wavelength is, or free space loss, or decibels. The difference between dBi and dBm, and all these other fun things that we do. That's why there's entire careers devoted to this. Thanks, guys. I'll see you guys over at Max's. Remember, less than 2 weeks, a week and a half. Mike and I in Lowell, causing chaos, doing a live stream. We hope to see you guys. I hope to see you guys before then, at least once, maybe twice. We'll see. But until next time, remember, as the old adage goes, stay uncensored, stay unapologetic, and stay unfornicated. I'll see you guys later.